Cristal. How are you?
I'm doing great, Richard.
We're here with Cristal Delgado, and I'm so excited that you made the trip into the iHub today so we can chat.
I'm so happy to be here.
I am so happy that you are here, and thank you again.
Thank you. I'm excited. This is something I've had on my calendar looking forward to for a while now.
Thank you. Yeah, we were talking before we went on air about some of your social media posts yesterday, and we were very excited and gratified to see that one of your items of note today was that you were going to be making an appearance on this show. Yes. So we thank you for that.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I love what you've done so far, the work you're doing, the people that you're bringing on. So I'm honored to be on here. Thank you.
Well, I'm excited because you and I have been operating in the same sphere for a long time.
Yeah.
But we've never actually sat down and really had a conversation and gotten to know each other, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm excited to do that today. But we have so much in common between the UMass Lowell connection, the Lowell, the Lawrence, the Haverhill, the Merrimack Valley community connection. Yeah. But tell me a little bit about you, because I know like this much, and I need to know like this much.
I love that. Yes. Well, I'm a Merrimack Valley native. I was born and raised in Methuen. And I've always loved the culture. Even though I was born and lived in Methuen, I always found myself in Lawrence. So I like to say I'm from Lawrence. 978 runs in my blood. I'm the oldest of 5. So,
wow. What's that like?
It's a huge responsibility, but I love it.
Mom, like the second mom, right?
Yeah, and my mom's a single mom. So really the second parent.
Yeah.
But I've always felt this responsibility to kind of show up in my community, to show my siblings a good example, to be a leader, to show them what a good example is of a human.
Brothers and sisters?
I have 4 brothers and a sister.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. So I live with 5 altogether, all of us. But that alone has been so fun because we've been able to just be a part of what happens here in the city. So I've seen the big changes. I've seen the businesses. It's growing. It's a hub. So that's a big part of me, is living there and making sure I'm a part of what I'm around. Aside from that, I am 24 years old. I just turned 24. So
quarter century crisis yet?
Not yet. Next year, I feel like coming for sure. Especially because I'm an old soul. So everybody around me is definitely. Like yeah. I think because my mom, she had me at 17. So we grew up together. So being that I was always around her and around her company and just seeing, I'm like, oh, I love these boss women. Like they're just something I've always been drawn to.
What does mom do?
My mom, she works for Ben and Rose's food pantry.
Oh, fantastic.
She's operations manager there. So she makes sure the volunteers are in, the food gets picked up. And that's another reason I'm so passionate about giving the community. Because
you saw from her? She taught Yeah. She instilled that in you.
She works 2 jobs.
Okay.
So she works that during the day, and then she has a night job.
Wow.
So she works as a night aide for disabled adults.
Oh, wow.
So her doing that, it's been us just...
So she just lives in total service.
Yes, total service. Yeah. So that's been a huge example for me of what like hard work means. My whole life, she's always just been in the field, on go, independent queen.
Yeah.
So that's instilled that in me. So I've followed her footsteps in the sense of just hustling.
Yeah.
So I've been working since I was 15. And
wow. What was your first job?
My first job was actually in the Methuen Public Schools.
Okay.
Yeah. So I worked for Rangers Club. I worked with the youth after school.
So cool.
And during the summer, growing up with all these kids, it just came like second nature to want to help them. But that's when I got like my first foot in the door of working with the young adults and young kids, and then also even education. I find that so fun. And the arts and crafts, just all the things. I was a latchkey kid growing up, so I know what it feels like. It's like your parents working all day.
Yes, you need to take care of yourself.
I wanted to make it fun for them to be there after school, and I did that.
So you've been hustling since you were 15, pretty much.
Yeah,
what we're talking about. So that's like 9 years going on 10 years.
Yeah, and I thought it was normal because growing up like as a Latina, especially with a single parent, you you can't ask mom for money. You can't,
if you want something, you got to go get it yourself, right?
Yeah, so I always loved it. Like I did that during school, and then I also worked at AMC Theaters. So I was working 2 jobs, like pretty much senior year into college, and I found that normal. And I loved it because it taught me like integrity, and then I got to jump around and see what do I like, what am I good at,
right?
And it felt good to have like my own thing. Yeah.
So then you started college, right?
Yeah. So when I graduated with Methuen High, I graduated from there. I started at UMass Boston because I loved the educational program. I really wanted to be a teacher.
Sure. Plus being in the city school.
Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, it'd be so fun to be a teacher. And then I had an amazing freshman year. But I will admit I didn't have proper education on what it means to be a student. Being that I was pretty much first gen, so I didn't have
Right.
education on loans or
Right.
financial aid, like so many things, and housing, because I was living on campus. It was the first year
And
they
they
had dorms.
only like guaranteed that for like 1 year.
I
Right?
didn't know that.
Yeah.
So that's what I was going to get into. I didn't know that. So I was living my best life freshman year, but reality hits is like, well, you're getting an apartment next year. Are you
Yeah.
going to stay on
You're
campus?
like,
I'm
oh
like,
my God, how am I going to afford
yeah,
a
I'm
apartment?
like, I'm just a girl. I'm 19. How am I going to do that? Because I was working,
Who's
but
going to sign my lease?
yes, I had no idea, and I wasn't ready for that responsibility.
Sure.
But I wanted to find a school that still had a great educational program. So then I transferred to Bridgewater State,
Mhm.
and I loved it. It was so fun. I was studying that, but I also realized, because then I was a Zoomer, I got into school during COVID.
COVID, yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, these teachers are not having a good time. They're
Right.
not being valued.
Right.
And also, is this really what I want to do forever?
Mhm.
Because that's so limited with an education degree.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
I
you're kind of putting yourself down the path
Yeah.
of you're going to teach in some capacity.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
So I knew I loved educating people, but do I want to do that forever?
Mhm.
Probably not.
Mhm.
But what do I love? I've always been a creative. I grew up as a chorus kid. I was in the musicals. I was
Mhm.
very artsy. And in COVID, I think that sparked everybody to tap into their creativity.
Sure.
So that for me, I liked makeup. I was like, let me do some makeup
Cool.
looks. And
Yeah.
I got into doing that. And
Self-taught, like tutorial
self-taught,
type
just me and
stuff?
YouTube against
Yeah,
the world.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so that's something I didn't realize how much I liked that, but I found the fun in it because you're cooped up at home. What are you gonna do?
So now you've and all for creativity.
Yeah, I was doing these crazy makeup looks and I was filming it. Like I was making TikToks and transition videos, and I'm like, oh, this is so
This is
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got into that content creation, but then I'm like, wait a second, I can open a business, because for me, I've grown up as a plus size girl my whole life,
Okay.
and I've always been confident and
Yeah, you seem to have a
outgoing.
ton
Thank
of
you.
confidence. Yeah, I mean, all you have to do is
Thank
flip
you.
through your Insta and see
Thank
that there's a
you.
lot of confidence there.
And it hasn't always
But I'm sure,
been
I would
that
say,
way.
sure, it didn't
Yeah.
come easy, right?
Yeah, I mean, at that time, I would say that I was still like 19 years old. I just moved back home from college. So being that I was still figuring out like my confidence levels,
Sure.
I realized that, oh my God, I feel beautiful.
Nice.
Like that's something
This
so many
makes me feel
women,
good.
yeah, like it's not about this makes me pretty, but it's like self-care.
Mm.
And that's something that I realized I love making people feel that way. So I'm like, what if I were to take these checks I was getting from unemployment and
Mhm.
invested in myself versus just blowing it?
Just
Because
spending it. Yeah.
realistically, like a lot of people during COVID, you're spending from anxiety or whatever, but I wanted to invest in myself.
Retail therapy.
Yes, retail therapy is real. I did it. And then I'm like, why don't I just have retail therapy with what I love, with makeup products? I'm already so deep into like watching these tutorials. I know the good products. I know what's good. So I did my homework, and then I ran to Ulta, I ran to Sephora, and I just built a kit, like a makeup kit.
Yeah.
And I started doing makeup.
And was this was like kind of venture number one for you?
Venture number
right? If you
one.
could put a time,
Yes.
plant a flag on a timeline.
Exactly.
That
That
was
was
number one.
2020.
2020.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So, like,
COVID.
4 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Yeah. Crazy, right? Yeah.
Time flies. But yeah, that was, I believe, I'm going to say September, because I wasn't crazy enough to do that while it was in its prime. So I had the whole summer,
Yeah.
and then I started my semester again, but I'm like, wait a second, like because I was working at Little Sprouts. I was teaching,
Okay.
but then I still realized that I wanted something more.
So you were working at Little Sprouts during the pandemic.
Yeah,
Wow.
I was an essential
Stressful.
worker.
Yeah. Essentially,
Yeah.
yeah. Front line. Central
Mhm.
worker. Yeah.
Yeah, we only had
Stressful.
about a month
Yeah.
off essentially,
Right.
and then we were back in there.
Yeah.
And I know I'm jumping around,
That's
but
okay. No, I'm
I
following.
think it's important to know,
Yeah.
like background and context, because it helped me so much to where I got today. I had my own pre-K class,
Mhm.
so it was about like 8 little kids on their little Zoom laptops, like starting kindergarten on a laptop.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, but I was so excited.
Well, you don't have to imagine. You lived it.
I lived it.
Yeah.
I lived it, but I still think they needed a good environment, that experience. So I have pictures still of like, I decorated the walls with like A, B, C, D, all the alphabets. I made a homemade like volcano with it. Like I was just so passionate about giving them like a fun environment. And I love that. That was such a good time.
Well, this is also creativity.
Yes,
right?
yes.
There's a
So
theme
it was
here.
all leading up to
There's a
something.
theme,
I'm
yeah.
like, oh, nobody else is like cutting a volcano from scratch and gluing it on a wall for fun, but I was. So I looked at my peers and no one else had that, but I realized that there was something in me that enjoyed the creative part.
Mm.
So it was that first risk that I took to start the makeup business, to be a freelance without proper, training. Like I trained myself. I didn't have
self-trained. You don't have a client
No.
base that you have to build it from nothing.
Yeah. And I'm so proud of myself, because I think now I wouldn't have taken as much risk, or at that point, like, how did she do that? But I was just really eager to jump into something,
Sure.
and to also just that feeling, like, I know how pretty I felt, I know how good that made me feel. Like, how would that be for other women in the position that maybe don't get dolled up, maybe don't practice self-care.
Right.
So
And it was so much more important during the pandemic.
exactly. That was the time I dyed my hair like lavender at home. Like I was just trying stuff.
Just having
So
fun. Yeah.
I'm thinking about people that are just cooped up that needed a reason to feel good
Right.
about themselves.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Well, give them something, just something to do.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
And
you know, an activity that was not like sitting on the couch. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And events were picking back up at that time. So I
Sure.
noticed that. I've always had an eye for like marketing and community. Like
Yeah.
I just can
You're
tell.
definitely plugged into events.
Yeah, thank you. I
What's
always-
going on?
Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, and at that time I was not even attending anything, but I was noticing that the world was starting back up again and there was a need. I didn't have my own studio space. I couldn't have people in my house with all my siblings and
Sure.
my mom
Sure.
in my
Yeah.
tiny apartment.
Right.
So I'm like, I'll go to you. Like I have my little
Yeah.
Nissan Sentra. My aunt was nice enough. She believed in me and she invested in like my whole kit.
Have brushes will travel.
Yeah. So I had my wheels and I have like so many videos of me. I strapped it in like a person because it was huge. It was like the size of me. And we would just go everywhere. I was just statewide. I was being innovative and because I know there's other competition.
Oh, sure.
Yes. So I'm like, I know I'm a beginner, but this is what I'm going to do. I made like a Google form and I'm like, tell me what songs make you feel good. And for an add-on, I'll make you your own
Oh,
playlist.
that's such a smart
Yes.
idea. Yeah.
Yeah. So I figured I'm like, now, even if they're not doing their makeup, they have this product forever for
Right.
me.
They have the playlist for
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm very intentional. Like every conversation I have, I like to get to know people. So that gave me a way to feel like, okay, I know your favorite songs before I even know you. That tells me something about you.
Yeah.
I bought lashes like wholesale and then I branded them with my own stuff and I was selling like these kits with lip glosses.
Wait,
and
slow down just for 1 second. So you're already thinking about branding.
yeah,
You're already thinking about add-ons.
yes.
Right.
And I bought it. I wasn't even thinking I did it.
Right. Well, but like even your playlist, you said I did that as an add-on.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you're already thinking about I'm going to have a core
Yeah.
offering of I'm going to do your makeup, whatever.
Yeah.
But oh, here's a bunch of add-ons. too,
Yes.
Right. And it's branded. So where did that come from, Cristal? Is that always just something that was kind of like inside of you?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I mean, being that I have so many siblings, I'm not the middle child, but I know what it feels like to get lost in a group.
Oh,
or
well,
to get
yeah,
lost.
this kid is a bunch.
Yes. And I've always, for some reason, I've been chronically online forever,
Mhm.
which is how I've grown my community. But I noticed that there's so many people that do the same thing, but
Mhm.
people are always going to buy from you and who
Mhm.
you are.
Mhm.
So I could have just done makeup, but what made me stand out was I was very intentional to detail. I made
Yeah.
you feel special.
Yeah.
I remember my slogan, because I came up with that for some reason, was I think it was like making you feel beautiful, like finding your inner beauty, something of that nature,
Mhm.
because I think that's important.
Sure.
So the branding part, I think I always had a marketing brain. That was that. But more importantly, I thought it was important to always have a piece of you as a brand. You should always leave
Yes.
something with your client, with your
Yes.
customer.
Yes. Something
Like
behind.
I walked in, you gave me
Yeah.
a sticker. That's perfect. I
Right.
think that's so important because they can forget about you. Or if
Mhm.
you do a great job, how are they gonna pass on the
Well,
message?
we're all busy, right? And
Yeah.
you're like today, you're literally going from one thing to the next thing to the
Yeah.
next thing, right? So you're here with me now,
Yes.
but then you're moving on to the next thing, then you're moving on to the
Mhm.
thing after that, right?
Exactly.
So what do you do that makes that impression that that
You're
leaves
right
behind,
on.
right?
That is so spot on.
Yeah.
And during that time, I mean, COVID, it was like people didn't really get human interaction. So how was I going to make the most out of that
Mhm.
one
Yep.
2 hours I got with this person?
Yep.
And it was that. So then I started tapping into my content creation, and that's when I really figured it out. I was like, I like this.
Yeah.
So I was finding like researching for hours different transitions, and you couldn't even do it to this day. You go on TikTok and you search
Right.
trends, transitions, and I was
Right.
doing my makeup for hours and like just to get
I
that
think
one
people
clip.
don't really have an appreciation for that too.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Like a 10,
Yeah.
let's call it a 15-second video.
Mhm.
You're probably putting in hours to create a 15-second
So
video.
true.
Yeah.
Yes. And I tell people that all the time that what you see is not the entire process. Even
Sure.
with this podcast, I'm sure there's a lot that goes into it behind the scenes.
Sure.
So as a creative, that's why I have such an appreciation for other people that create because I know how much it takes to do the work you do,
Mhm.
especially when it's intentional and it's great.
Yep.
There's a lot. So that's what I was doing. And I realized that people really like that. And I did this series for a little bit called Glam and Guidance,
Ooh, cool.
where nobody was really doing this, but I was doing voiceovers. So you saw me doing my makeup, but I was voicing over advice on how to get over a breakup, how to build self-love.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I didn't know that I had
Yeah.
that building up, but I
Yeah.
realized
So that's coming from a
Mhm.
interesting place as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's when I realized I'm like, let me add another twist to the makeup part and the content creation side. Let me do both.
Mm.
So I started doing that, and that's when I started really finding my audience
Mhm.
and people, women that want to learn how to do their makeup. So I was showing them every step, every product.
Mhm.
But then it was for men as well. They could listen to this
Sure.
advice that was
Self-love,
Yes,
self-care,
exactly.
yeah, self-affirmation, whatever,
Mhm.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. So COVID came and went,
Yeah.
and
Thank God.
the business that was fun, but
Yeah.
then I realized that I wasn't putting as much attention into my education. And that's something that for me, I was able to work my jobs throughout high school and it wasn't a problem. My grades were awesome, but then college is a little different.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm like, oh, I don't want to sacrifice working. I can't.
Right.
But I want to be in school. Yes.
Yep.
So I decided that I'm like, now that COVID's dying down, I can go back on campus and I'm going to put the makeup business on pause. Yep. So at that point, I think I completed that cycle.
Okay.
Because I made so many connections, so many friends through that process because I don't know what it is. People were just gravitating to me. I wasn't the best makeup artist. I was still a beginner.
Yeah, but you something resonated with people, right?
Yeah.
But maybe it was the overlap of your content, the fact that you were doing things that were not just related to makeup, but other pieces, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. And that's how I've just started building my community everywhere I went. It was just picking up as I went. So I ended that chapter, but those people are still with me to this day.
Yep.
And I went back to school. I still wanted to do the makeup side and I love cosmetics. I love self-care. So I started working at Sephora. So I was living on campus at Bridgewater State, doing full-time school and then working part-time. And what I found myself struggling with was advocating for myself. I wasn't doing that great in classes and I didn't really make an effort to look for tutoring or to tell my advisor. I kind of thought, everybody around me is doing great. They're not struggling. So why should I be? Yeah. And it's not like I was like
being hard on yourself.
Yes, that's something that I've had to outgrow. But being that I didn't have any examples of anybody in my life that was in college or that got through college.
First generation school, like you just mentioned.
I had to navigate that. So looking back, what I would tell my younger self is ask for help because what ended up happening was I got on academic probation and then I didn't get my financial aid for the next semester. Right. So now I was stuck with a job.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I get a job that's far from home.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. And I'm not in school anymore.
Exactly. Yep. And I made the mistake, I would say, because I thought I'm going to be good for next semester. So I kind of applied to live there throughout the winter break. So then I was stuck with this debt because I couldn't go back.
Right.
And I'm like, now I'm living here, I'm working, let me figure out what I can do.
Right.
But then the time came and I had to move out. I packed up all my things and I was crazy enough to live here in Lawrence and drive down to Braintree. So 2-hour commute.
So to keep working.
Yes, to keep working because I didn't have the privilege to not work.
Right.
So I'm trying to think of what came after that, but that alone was like, this is not sustainable.
This is not sustainable. 2-hour commute.
And it's not worth it. I'm like, I'm not making any commission for my sales there. Like, is it even worth it?
Right.
So at that point.
And all your creative stuff is on hold.
Everything was on pause. Right? And my whole world was just so different because
your world became like work and commute, right?
Working commute. I had been a student my whole life. So to stop, it felt like a piece of my identity was gone. My community that I built, I had a church out there. I had friends. I had to stop the clubs. So I had to kind of start over. But coming back home, I'm like, well, I need a job that's sustainable. I don't care what it is. I'm a hustler. I'll figure it out. So I got a job at T-Mobile. My friend, thankfully, he had that connection. So I started working there part-time. But then I had the other part-time in my life. Like, what else am I going to do? Now I have my time back. So what I decided was I can't go back to school right now. Put it on pause. But why not tap into my creative side? And what I was realizing is I was in a space when I was at school and even in this period, I was really confident with myself, my body, just who I was. And I wanted to create content around that. So I started doing fit checks where I was like, hey, plus size friendly outfits, bougie on a budget, because I was on a budget. I was a real college.
You were living it,
I was in it. And I wasn't ashamed to say that. Like, I'm not living a facade. I'm not where I want to be at financially, but I can help you dress how you want to dress on a budget. And that got me a partnership with Rainbow Shops, which is a plus size brand or plus size inclusive brand. And that felt so good.
That felt great.
Yeah, because I was able to just be myself on social media and wear what I want to wear and get paid for it.
I was going to say, and get some income.
Yes. So it wasn't a lot. I mean, they mostly just gave me like store credit to buy the outfits, but it's clothing. So,
it's a necessity. We need clothes.
Exactly. And for me, I've always thought that the way you dress that's how you show up in the world. So that's important. I'm still navigating my style, but for the most part,
it's going to change many times over your life.
Absolutely.
I can tell you my style has changed over the years. Everyone's does.
Right? It just explains like what area you're in.
And COVID threw a lot of it out the window too.
Oh my gosh, the amount of clothes I donated and got rid of was crazy. But I think that's important. And that's something that showed me that, I can be somebody on social media, make an impact, influence. Like, you don't have to be an influencer, but your words have power. What you create, how you show up, that means something. So I started doing that. And as I was
I was going to say, and also, Crystal, in a world where social media is surrounded by people who are not focusing maybe necessarily on body positivity or on plus size girls, right? Where most of what you see is the polar opposite.
Literally that.
Yeah.
Especially, I would say now there's way more, but at that time it was
so it has evolved.
Yeah.
But then it wasn't. Yeah.
That's why I started making it, because I remember being the girl looking for clothing online, searching, and I couldn't find any examples of style inspo or anything.
Yep.
And that felt good to be that person that you can search up and you see that this is what you can wear. It's affordable and it's for you, because most times the stigma for plus size clothing is you have to pay way more.
Right.
It could be the same dress, but since it's 2X, it costs $10 more for whatever reason.
Ridiculous. Yeah.
Yes. So that felt good to show inclusivity, to show that there's a brand that supports people like us and that I can be that example.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what happens next?
What happens next? So this is where the fun begins. I didn't realize it at the time, but I wanted to get into content creation as a freelancer, as a contractor. And not like I had a ton of experience. All I had was really what I did for my business before. And then I was making graphics for my story, like Pinterest posts. I would just post them on my story with my own little razzle dazzle.
Nice.
But I had a knack for that. Like I found it so fun, so easy. I did that in 2 minutes. So I'm like, why not tap into that?
Yeah.
But there was a mission behind that, because I saw that when I was back home, I didn't have my community anymore. I didn't have it, but there was an organization that was a community that was for creatives like me, that was making an impact. And I saw they were doing events and they were doing community initiatives, but the marketing or their socials wasn't reflecting that. Right. And me, I always had an eye for
there's
that.
a piece that's missing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can be more effective. You can be more.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep.
And I've always done that, like identified brands and people. And immediately, if you tell me a name, I'm going to go on Instagram and search it. And I want to see that it reflects what they do, who they are. But I wasn't getting that. So I reached out to the owner and I told them that, hey, you have a great mission. I think I can make it better. I have skills for marketing. I want to grow as a creative. And I just shot my shot. Because like what source you can say is no.
Well, I love that too, because you didn't know this person, right? So here again is a kind of an example of you're out there hustling. Yeah. And a lot of folks that we talk to, they have that moment where they realize they have to put the fear aside of like reaching out to somebody you don't know, send that cold email, send that cold DM, do something, shoot your shot, like you said.
Exactly.
Right? So you did that.
I did that. Yeah. And that's important. Is like there's connections that you have, because I've had them on social media forever, but I didn't realize that could be a potential opportunity. So there's people there that can be the next chapter for you. And that's what it became for me.
Nice.
Very quickly, we just started collaborating. I loved what they were doing. So I was very involved. So I would work my part-time. And then after I would jump right into that. Yeah, I went to an event and I got some videos and I made flyers. I'm like, oh, I'm pretty good.
Yeah, I could do this.
Yeah. And then we saw together that there was a need in the community, specifically in Lawrence, for small businesses to show up on social media. Right. They were doing big things, but you couldn't see that reflected. Yeah. So we just started pitching ourselves. We're like, hey, do you need social media management and marketing? We do that. Right. And I was just self-taught. And
we know the community in which you are operating, because we're part of that community.
That's exactly why I believe we did so well, was because we were in the field with them. We weren't like a big corporation. We weren't people that weren't there. We saw their day-to-day struggles and their impact and knew that, well, I knew that I can make really good content for it. So that's what we started doing. We worked as a team to just look for different opportunities in the community. Right. And thankfully, most of them just came to us, because that wasn't, at the time, that wasn't as common. Right. But that grew my portfolio immensely, because it was nonprofits and restaurants and contractors, like so many different fields, things that I've never worked in, but I was able to help them get their message across. And now when I look back on it, I'm like, I'm really proud of myself, because they didn't know. I didn't go to school for that. I was teaching myself as I went.
Hey, they don't need to know that. They don't need to know the details.
And it's a lot of trial and error. I think that sometimes we get stuck on the perfectionism and we think that we can't start. Right. But if I had held myself back, I would not know everything I know now.
Is that perfect is the enemy of good?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Granted, I've had my moments where I take a lot of pride in my work, so it takes a couple tries. Sure. But during those, I would say we're back on the timeline. So I'm following the timeline. So that summer, because that was now March of 2022. Okay. So that's when I was working at T-Mobile. I was there. And then by August, I was faced with an opportunity. Let me backtrack a little bit. Sure. In July, I went ahead and I got a breast reduction, just because I was confident in my body, but it made it really hard to exercise.
Feeling physically, yeah.
Yes,
Having
yes.
some physical
Because I've-
manifestations of, yeah.
Absolutely.
Sure.
I believe health as well. So I
Sure.
was, and I struggle as well with, I didn't know it at the time, but I had PCOS,
Okay.
which
Yep,
means I
yep.
had cysts in my ovaries, and it made
Yeah.
it really hard to.
Polycystic
Yeah.
ovarian syndrome.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
You know the vocab.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that alone was already a battle I faced where I was overweight all my life. I didn't know why. And I thought, well, this will make it easier to
Right.
live a healthier lifestyle.
Right.
So at that time, I had a whole month off from work
Mhm.
and I had time on my hands. And I was approached with the opportunity, which I never would have thought of, was to be a real estate agent. And a local brokerage reached out and they said, hey, we'll pay for your classes. We
Yes.
think you'd be great at
Yep.
it. I'm like, you know what? I'll do that.
Yeah.
So
Now
I
we're like on hustle number 4,
Hustle, yeah.
3, 4. I'm losing count, but
it's
yeah.
like, yeah,
Yep.
it's a lot. It's a
Yep.
lot. But I think that was 3.
Okay.
So at that point, I was off from work already. So
Yeah.
I figured, why not
Yeah,
jump
sure.
into
And
that?
hey, they're willing to pay for it, right? So,
Exactly.
absolutely.
I'm like, why not? And I saw that as a good opportunity where I'm like, I don't know if I want to sell houses, but I like the opportunity of meeting investors and meeting
Yeah,
people.
sure.
and-
There's many sides to real estate that aren't
Yes.
just selling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So I took the course, and then by that point, it was August, and I was approached at that point.
Mhm.
And this is where rejection is redirection, because yes, this is where I learned it. I didn't know it at the time, but what happened was they told me, hey, I know you don't have your license yet, but we're willing to give you a position here
Mhm.
until you get the
It's
license.
firm. Yep.
Yeah, so if you quit your other job, you'll be good here.
Yep.
So I quit the job, but they resigned. They resigned the letter of
Oh, yeah. They rescinded the letter.
offer letter.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah. And,
So-
and you had already quit your other thing.
I quit my
so
job.
now you're like in a
So-
hard place. Yep.
Yes. And I'm like, okay, do I go crying back to my job? Because I
It's-
put in my
yeah.
2 weeks. I
Right.
could have taken
Right.
it back.
Right.
Or do I just go full-time entrepreneurship with what I was doing as a
Right.
content creator at
Yep.
the organization?
Yeah. Drive
And-
forward. Yep.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm going to do that. so I did that.
That's pretty brave.
That was so scary.
You could have gone back to T-Mobile and said, like,
Mhm.
can I have my job back?
Yeah. And I knew it probably wasn't the smartest decision because I
Sure.
didn't have like savings or a
Right.
plan, but something
Well,
in me.
But you thought the other company, they told you they were going to
Yeah,
hire you.
yeah.
So that's kind of a normal transition of you are at a job, you get offered a better job,
Mhm.
and then you move from that job. But they, you didn't know they were going to kind
It
of
was something
reverse their decision.
that
Yeah.
I'm grateful it happened
sure.
because that really forced me into like just full hustle mode.
Right.
So at that point, we were at a point where we were pretty good with clients as well with the content creation, social media management. So that gave me security.
Right.
But now I had to really hustle to keep
Yeah,
them and to
because
find
now
more.
it's like it's your
Yes.
whole world.
It was my
Yeah.
everything. So
Yeah.
that was like my first full year of full-time entrepreneurship,
Mhm.
which was the hardest thing I've ever done. Oh my gosh, that was such a journey, but I took so much ownership at where I was at. That company showed me so much about just being in the community, making an impact, using your work to make a difference.
Sure.
Because it wasn't just cute little posts. It was watching this nonprofit gain donors through this. It was watching them grow their programs through this.
Right.
Restaurants getting sales.
Right.
And I was creating content that was good, especially with the videos. It
You're
was
seeing
getting
the impact. of what you're doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
and that's what kept me going was like a rush of seeing, oh look, this one got 50K views, 20
Yeah.
views. Like
Right.
what how am I doing?
How do I
that?
get to 100K?
Yeah. And it was realizing that I had an eye for that where I realized, oh, this clip and this transition and this will
Right.
really
Right.
help them
Causes
further.
people engage more with this than
Yeah.
they did when we tried something else. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I had an eye for that.
Mm.
And then I realized that I wanted to do more with the organization. I wanted to take more ownership.
Mhm.
So I'm like, let me be marketing director. I can
Yeah.
help with these clients, but I can also help with the vision of
Of the
marketing.
organization itself.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we got
Yeah.
into that. And then since we were doing so many events, it gave me the creative direction
It's
to help
more
with
event stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's when I found the passion as well. I was meeting so many people. I was able to
Yep.
take pride in like, oh, look, this flyer got these people here. This video
Right.
got these people here. So event promotion was really fun. And then fast forward to May of 2023, that's when it was a huge transition because I realized that I'm already doing full-time work here. I want to be a partner. I'm
Right.
already taking so much ownership.
Right.
So we agreed that I could be a partner. I could be a COO as well.
But you had advocated for that, I'm sure.
Yeah,
right?
I spoke up.
Yeah. Well, but this is a great teachable
Yes.
moment for a lot of people listening right now is that
Mhm.
if you don't speak up, if you
Yeah.
don't ask, guess
Those
what?
mouths don't get fed.
Thank
at
you.
all.
There you go. I love that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's something I could have got rejected or whatever,
Sure.
but
Absolutely.
when you know your worth and your power, you
Right.
have to
You
speak
have
up
to
on
advocate
it.
for
Like,
it. Yeah.
no one's gonna do it for you.
Right.
So I did that, and of course, well, not of course, but thankfully,
Yeah.
he
Thankfully.
agreed.
Yeah.
And that just led me into a whole different world of being like actual business
Now you're
owner.
like running operations.
Yes,
Yeah.
operations, which
Yeah.
is something I realized that I loved because in that time I was just doing so many behind the scenes logistics. That's what I love, the systems, how it
Mhm.
works. when you come with a creative idea, I find a way to just steps 1 through 30. Like, I need to know how. So that's what I was doing. And that was really fulfilling. And then with the events, we were able to bring on different team members and contractors, and I wanted to train them and help them. And I found myself just really working with their personal development. It wasn't like they were just another person. I cared about
You were very invested in their journey.
Totally. And I think you could say that if you ask anyone that I worked with in that season, they could tell you that I really cared. I got to know them. I knew their kids, their family, their why. And I thought that was important because I knew for me, in order for me to do great work, I needed to find it fulfilling. So I dug deep into their stories and their why. And it was a good time. And then I would say the biggest shift happened in this past March, April. I was presented with the opportunity to host a women's conference as a partnership because I was building a women's community. I started my little brand, Hustle Her.
Hustle Her.
Yes.
Talk about Hustle Her.
I love that. It started January 1st. You can literally look on my page on my broadcast channel. I called it Hustle Her Mindset. And I don't know where it came from. I just knew that I was her, as you've seen in my journey.
You're a her and you're hustling.
Yes, always. So
always,
like, there's other women like me who are working so hard, and it's the mindset. It's that. But how do you keep fueling it? And it's community.
Right. How do you not burn out?
Exactly.
Yep.
So I had started the broadcast channel, and people loved it because it's just like daily motivational messages and tips and tricks. And I was treating it like my own little community. But when I was presented with the opportunity to host this event, I'm like, that's a great ode to the woman I've become. Because from when I was at T-Mobile to now, it's unrecognizable. I didn't have all these connections. I wasn't in the field. I wasn't advocating for myself. And I was really proud. So I thought it was like a good celebrational moment. And to show like, oh, look at all the people I've met, all these amazing women that have helped me.
We're gonna culminate them, bring them all together. We're gonna have an event where we're gonna celebrate each other. We're gonna empower each other, right?
That's exactly.
Some of my favorite folks were there. Oh my
gosh. I look back and I'm such like just so nostalgic.
Great nostalgia.
Because
and probably a real sense of pride and accomplishment too, right?
So proud because there's so much work that went on behind the scenes, and it took a lot of sacrifice. It took a lot of time. But most importantly, just really believing in myself and my team and what I was doing, because for me to shoot my shot with some of those women, those vendors, those opportunities, it was not easy.
So you could have easily said, like, who are you? Like, what are you trying to do?
And I got tons of no's. Like, what sponsors?
You're always going to get them.
But I knew that if I didn't shoot my shot, then I was never going to know if it was a yes or no. And that event was a good way to show myself, yeah, you got that.
Nice.
So that experience was unforgettable. I'm still getting thank you messages about it. I'm still speaking to those people.
Well, you can still see it resonating out there.
And that's what
stuff.
It's so beautiful to see that it's still making an impact. But that season, that showed me that I think I'm ready for my next chapter. Like it was like bittersweet, but it was something.
But you're like, okay, I'm at another kind of reflection and transition point.
And it was that, I would say that transitional part was really interesting because sometimes you don't want to let go, you don't want to move on. And I was pulling back a lot, but I kept finding myself in different situations where, no, this isn't in my vision, and that's okay. So then I finally made a decision right before my 24th birthday, because I'm really big on
milestones.
Yes. And then I'm like, this is a milestone, and do I want to enter this milestone?
How am I entering the next year, and what do I want to accomplish?
Exactly. It was going to just determine how the rest of my 24th year, my golden year, went, because I turned 24 on the 24th. Yes. So I decided to step down that same week, and it was such a freeing feeling. It wasn't what I thought, but it was just like, okay, now what do you want to do, girl? What's next? And that first week, I took it fully to rest and relax. I'm really big on self-care and just mental resets. So that was awesome, because I hadn't had that in forever.
A long time,
I was committed
to doing a lot of work for a long time.
So even like while I was on vacation last summer in DR, I was still working. So I never really gave myself the opportunity.
Well, because you were in a true entrepreneurial mindset.
And I don't think people understood that.
There is no stopping.
My sister, she was like, you sound like Meryl Streep, because I would be on the phone like, hello, I need you. Like I was sending voice messages while driving to the beach. She's like, so it was just a running joke, but it was like, I really didn't think I could rest. And I look back and I'm like, I wish I had
rested a little bit. But you, at that time, you're trying to grow a business. Yes, it was already established, but you were trying to take it to another level.
I'm a committed being.
A, you're a committed being. You were committed to it. And B, you were trying to take it to another level, bringing in new offerings and new services that business didn't have before. And you were taking full ownership of that.
I did. And also, I will admit that when you're in that position, you're just constantly in survival mode. When you're doing it full time, you can't afford a day off. At that point, it's a startup. So you have to work for the money you make. So at that point, I did that, but that's why I felt so free, because I'm like, wow, I have thankfully I have security because I started an internship with a great organization.
Yeah.
So I'll say Amplify Latinx
Yes.
is an amazing nonprofit. And I was introduced because back in the beginning of the year, we needed the help with the
Sure.
organization I was at because we had the people, we had the products, but we needed organizing the finances. And I'm not a financial advisor. I could
Sure.
do as much logistics as I want, but we
Right.
needed help.
Yeah.
So we were matched with an amazing mentor for free. And he worked with us an hour a week to help us organize what's selling, what's not, what's our profit loss, so many great things. And that
A lot to learn.
I stored it in. I'm like,
Sure.
oh, when I have a business, I'm going to remember this.
Mhm.
So everything I was learning, the people I was meeting, I was just storing it up to see how I can pour into my next chapter.
Mm.
But that left me feeling like, wow, there's so many women and people that I know in my community that would love this, but they don't know about
They know about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I loved their mission, and I saw there was an opening for an internship. And even though I took a break on school, I'm
You're
like,
I'm in.
yeah,
Yeah.
why not?
Right.
And other people are like, oh, like, why would you be an intern? But it's like, I'm not an intern. I'm just a trial run with something that I
Sure.
think could work.
Right.
And it gave me security, which was huge. And I was able to just show my community that I can help you and there's a resource for you. And it
Sure.
felt really good working for a
Sure.
nonprofit.
Right. Well, and let's back up for a second.
Yeah.
It's Betty Francisco too. Right?
Yes,
Who's
amazing.
Like an amazing woman.
Yeah.
Right. To allow yourself to enter into that orbit.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that was a whole new world that I
Yeah.
never tapped into. Like any other woman, she's a CEO.
Right.
And then just the team in general in the world. I remember I went to my first Amplify event and it was their inaugural celebration at the beautiful museum
Oh yeah.
in Salem, Mass.
Yep.
And I was like shocked. I was so shocked because I walked in and it was just beautiful. Every intention, it was like huge, their logo and like pretty lighting
So
on the
well
walls.
done. Like high
Yes.
production value.
Yes. And I'm an events girly.
So you were
seeing
like,
that,
yeah,
I'm like,
you're like salivating. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
because I kind of downplayed them. I'm like, oh, they're a nonprofit. They just opened an office in Lawrence.
It's gonna be like something
Yeah.
cute, whatever.
But
Yeah.
wow, that
Yeah, like,
opens
no, they
up
got
a
it together.
world.
Yeah.
Yes. And the people they had in that room, that showed me that look at this. There's so many, I knew some of them, but there's so many Latinos in our community that weren't known to me or that
Right.
aren't well
So
known.
you're
like they
meeting
should.
people, you're making
Yes.
connections.
And
Yeah.
that's what I love, that Amplify was focusing on bringing attention to those Latinos that need the spotlight.
Mhm.
So that was great. I met the top 100 ALX members of the
Yeah.
previous year. So many amazing vendors and people and supporters. And that now put me in my community. I felt at home. Like,
Nice.
I'm like, wow, look at all these people
Yeah.
that speak my language, that
Yeah.
look like me,
Yeah. Yeah.
that
yeah.
are successful,
Right.
that
So
give me that
important.
validation.
Yeah. So important. Yeah.
Absolutely. So working through Amplify, I was able to step away from my previous role and now have
Mhm.
the security, but now the time, because I'm only there part-time.
Right.
So again, the question, what am I doing with
What
the
am I
rest
doing
of my
with the rest of my
part-time?
time? Yeah. Exactly.
Yes.
You're not a girl to sit around.
No, I'm not. And I remember my friend was like, oh, girl, wait, why are you trying to launch something? I'm like, no, I need to do something now.
Right.
Like, I can't sit
I
still.
got the itch.
Yeah. And it's not like it's about the money because it's never been, but it was
Sure.
like my purpose. Like, I felt like it was selfish of me to sit back with that and not share it with the world.
Mm.
So now that I have all these skills, it's like, okay, what's next? Because I know that yes, I'm great at content. Yes, I'm good at connecting, but how can I combine all these passions to make an
Mhm.
impact? Because people need it. And I realized that my passion does lie with a woman. It does lie with girls that look like me and women that are older. I'm an old soul. So all my
So
friends.
you feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All my friends are like moms and
Yeah.
aunts and they're older, but they also show me that there's women that are just like me that want that community.
Sure.
So that's what I'm focusing on now.
Wow.
Yes.
So, and how are you kind of starting to conceptualize that, Cristal?
That's a great
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
So thankfully, I have so many amazing women that have stepped up to the plate to mentor, to help, to guide me. So I am grateful because they've helped me take these things and piece it together. And I realized myself, I want a platform for these people.
Yeah.
And my podcast, Embracing the Journey, that's exactly what I want to help people do. So my goal is to have something along the lines of helping
Mhm.
women embrace their journeys
Nice.
through personal coaching, through group coaching, workshops. I don't want to create content for them again. I think I'm past that chapter, but I want to show you how to do it for yourself. I
Right.
believe in self-sufficiency. So
Right.
helping with brand strategy, like that's just something that gets me so excited when I can sit with somebody and hear their story. And I'm like, oh girl, you could post this, and you will do great.
What I'm hearing is education. I'm
Yes.
hearing you're teaching again.
My teaching side is coming out.
Your teaching side.
Yes.
So maybe that educator is deep within you, and it
Always.
comes out over. And we've heard it in the
Yes.
context of what you just told us, come out over and over again as you're
Yeah.
now teaching a next generation.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And that's like, out of this whole transitional process, that's the best part is like, oh, like I got it.
Mhm.
Because it's been a lot of, in these past 2-3 weeks, trust me, this is what I think about every day. Like, is this a business? No. Is this it? No. And
Right.
then today, this week,
Experimentation.
yeah.
Right.
Because I'll be honest, as soon as I stepped down, I had so many people come out the woodworks to want to collaborate, to want to hire me, to want to work. And I was kind of putting myself in a box where, oh, I'll just do consecration for them. But it's like, I don't want to just do something.
Sure.
I want to show up and do it really well
Right.
and be passionate about it. So that's also put me in a position where I can say no, but I have great friends that'll do that for you. So that's where all these.
So you're still providing value to them by
Yes.
giving them a referral or handing it off. Or
And
not
I've
just-
heard that, like, why would you just hand that over?
Yeah.
But I'm such a believer in good
I
karma.
was going to say karma.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
So
It's paying forward.
all my friends that are creators or entrepreneurs, you can ask. I've referred at least 1-2 people to them because I think that's so important. And I know when it's my turn and it comes,
Yeah.
it'll come back tenfold. But it's not even about that. It's just I know it's good for them. And even today, I called my friend. I'm like, girl, I got an opportunity for you. I know you do this and this. She's like, thank you. Yes, I want
perfect.
it.
Yeah.
So,
So you're a networker. You're a
Yeah.
connector.
yes,
And
and
an educator.
I didn't even realize that until, again, this past year, this season, where I'm like, I know so many good people and I love putting the dots together.
Sure.
And that's something else I want to do, is being able to bring these people together. I don't think I'll do big events again because
Sure.
that was so overwhelming.
Yeah.
But I'm really big on like the intimate
Mhm.
workshops,
Sure.
and intimate gatherings, because that's when you really get to know people. So I'm looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm. Is there another Hustle Her event in the works yet?
So
Not to go to.
no,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
good question.
Yeah.
I get that question a lot.
I bet you do. Because the
I'm-
first one was so successful. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
grateful, and that was an amazing partnership. But I also think even the Hustle Her era
Mhm.
is gonna stay there.
Yeah.
I want to start fresh, and I'm so glad I got the opportunity.
Mhm.
But I want to really just start fresh with my own thing.
Right.
I look forward to bringing women together in
Sure.
a different way, and I love what that was. What people left with, it was impactful,
Mm.
and that hasn't been done in that way with
Sure.
performances and vendors and a fashion show and so many small businesses and women coming together. So
Right. It was a very eclectic event, right?
yeah. And I think that's a secret sauce, even
Right.
with what MWP does. That's what they're good at, is creating experiences that are one of one.
Sure.
So I'm grateful I got to be a part of that and bring
And kind
my
of get and learn from that. Yeah.
yes,
Absolutely. Yeah,
yes.
absolutely.
But I definitely feel like if anyone wants experience like that, definitely MWP is providing those. So I'm looking forward to doing my own thing
Yeah.
and focusing more of that intentional one-on-one and intimate settings versus huge things.
Sure.
But I'll definitely be in the room for any other events
Right.
going on
Right.
because I love that.
Empowering the Change is the name of your podcast.
So the podcast is called Embracing the
Embracing
Journey.
the Journey. Oh my God, I was
Yes.
not
No,
even close.
no
Empowering
worries.
the Change.
It's okay. It's
Embracing
okay.
the Journey.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So that's the podcast,
Yep.
and with my business, I hope to be embracing her journey. That's what I want to call
The
it.
tagline. Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
just because I realize as much as I want to help the whole world, a woman is just what I'm called to do,
Sure,
called
absolutely.
to help.
Yep.
So that's what I want to do.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. As I mentioned before, you and I traveled in the same orbit for a long
Mhm.
time, but we haven't had a chance to do what we're doing right now and really just kind of get to know each
Yeah.
other. But I remember speaking to a co-colleague of ours, and she said something. She mentioned your name, and I, without even hesitating, I said, "Oh, Cristal, I love her."
Oh, thank you.
But I'm like thinking, like, I love you
Wow.
based on what I've seen of you on
you.
social media. And we do live in a world now where people forge very strong bonds
Absolutely.
over social media before they've even met in person.
Yes.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is I knew I liked you before I met you.
You're the best. Thank
So-
you. I could say exactly the same.
And thank you for coming here today, Cristal, telling us your story. I can't wait for the next chapter that you're literally standing on the threshold of.
You're
right?
part of the start
Now.
of
Yeah.
my new journey.
Right?
So thank
You know, I love it. I love it. And I can't wait to see more of it.
Thank
And
you.
anything else you want to plug before we let you go?
I would say tune into my platforms,
Yeah.
Cristal Del Rey everywhere. That is where I share my day to day, and I want you to embrace your journey with me. And thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be on here.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.